Okay, so let's talk about saving. It's potentially one of the most boring things you could talk about. I think it's fair to say. However, it is by far the most important aspect of our lives and our economy for the reasons I'll take you through. Essentially, we live globally now in a system whereby each country has its central bank, its reserve bank, that prints the national currency and monitors interest rates, puts them up and down, and monitors money supply, the stock of money, and they have obviously strong relationships with private banks, who then act in the private markets to do lending to private businesses and of course the private individual. So money is ubiquitous. I mean, it's how we exchange value. That's just the reality. It's not so much a barter economy anymore, and more it's money's become electronic as well. And so that is the method we've decided on for transferring value. Now, at the moment, in simple terms, what you see economically is governments coming out with a range of policies um, that affect adults from about the age of 20 to 70, and what we call the tax transfer system. And money flies around, and the government just basically makes adjustments to that as people ask for adjustments, mainly, and to the extent that governments need votes and play politics. And towards the end, everyone gets treated reasonably fairly, although there's always plenty of argument about that. And that's fine. Running economics on economic policies for adults between the age of 20 to 70 makes a lot of sense. That's when they're working, that's when they're having children, that's when they need very solid health insurance, although as you get older, you need health insurance more and more. But it makes sense to encourage economic activity and to try to even things up with adults between the age of 20 and 70. However, it is my very strong belief that there's one big problem with this. And that is if you want if you want the individual to transact optimally, or even just reasonably optimally, if there's such a term, between the ages of 20 and 70, you basically have to, in my opinion, get them saving from birth and giving them financial literacy well before the age of 20. Otherwise, you're simply setting someone up to fail. And you'll always need a big tax transfer system, a big government policy fiscal system to try and even things up later. Which, I mean, we can do, and we're very successful at it in Australia. But as much as possible, you really want the individual looking after their own financial affairs. Well, that's very hard if you don't teach them at school, and it's very hard if you don't show them the benefits of saving from birth, which is very necessary. And government policy papers in the UK have sort of spoken about this, and in Australia it's been mentioned as ideas around economic policies, but I think it's absolutely fundamental because what we've seen recently, and this is very interesting, and Treasury modelling in Australia shows this, we've seen people in their 60s, 70s and 80s saving at a significant rate in Australia. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But it is slightly odd that you see the saving rates there when really you want the saving rates earlier in life, because time is really the critical factor. So you really want people saving as soon as possible and learning about financial literacy, so that when they reach their 20s and 30s and they get mortgages thrown at them, credit cards, insurance policies, superannuation policies, the endless rounds of bills, rental agreements, so on and so forth, spreadsheets, accounting, tax filings, the list goes on, that people have a general understanding of planned purchases, saving, so saving is deferred spending, if you like, planned purchases, investing, so on and so forth, rather than people having epiphanies much later in life. I don't think that's helpful, and I think we need to get away from that and encourage saving and financial literacy much earlier in life, and of course then investing so that people can actually get the products of the future in the future with their savings, and better products that they will need. So saving really is the missing aspect of economics, because a lot of policies, if not all economic policies, you could say, basically try to make up for government economic policies, basically try to make up for the fact that the individual doesn't save. And that's very unfortunate because it's always a second best solution. Um, and really, a lot can be fixed by saving. And I think I've explained before. I went to a function where someone explained to me that stakeholder rights. So if you're a shareholder, the way to reform that is that shareholders after 20 years give up their rights, and the shareholder rights get transferred to someone else. And this person was suggesting that that sort of transferal of wealth was the way to move forward. And I explained to him my view on saving, and which he disagreed with. But then he had the honesty to admit that his father had saved for him from birth and helped him out with financial literacy, and that had led to this fellow's affluence and comfortable financial situation, and he was doing it for his children. So it's quite interesting because when we talk about government policy and economic policy making things fairer, you've really got to help the individual make things fairer for themselves rather than rely on the tax transfer system always doing it, because that's a never-ending story, and the start and finish of individual fairness, or fairness for individuals, starts and finishes with them. And once they have money, wherever they got it from, they have to convert it into utility, and for that they need financial literacy. So, saving and financial literacy, those are the missing aspects and the most important aspects of economics.